Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the File Center at Holy Cross College. I know you guys know where you are, but the people that are watching us this morning have no idea what's going on here, so we need to make a few introductions. So welcome this morning. Glad to have you. Glad to have our panelists here. I'm going to say a few words about them so that you know who you're looking at and who you're listening to, and then we'll just get into some questions. I have some prepared questions that we are going to do. But if there's something that hits you in one of their answers and you want to raise your hand and ask a question, feel free to do this. This is supposed to be interactive, and we want to make sure that you're getting the information that you'd like to get out of this morning. Okay, so let me introduce you to a couple of the panelists. I'll introduce you to all of the panelists, not just a couple. Angelo and Carlo. Raise your hand. Angelo has made a significant contribution to the sports broadcasting community in South Bend since arriving in 2007 and working at the WNDU right across the street. In 2004, he launched the Sports Michiana alongside Holy Cross alum parent Chuck Freeby to fill the void of local sports coverage in the Michiana area. Milt Lee, he's currently serving as the Director of Community Programs and K-12 Athletics for the South Bend Community School Corporation. Milt oversees the development and implementation of sports programs across the K-12 schools in the district. Abby Clark is the head women's golf coach at Holy Cross College, marking her as the program's first dedicated head coach. In 2019, she graduated from Holy Cross. She earned her business degree in just 3 years. In addition to her coaching role, she serves as the Assistant Director of Stewardship at Holy Cross in the advancement area, where she's actively involved in leading fundraising efforts to support the college, including initiatives to expand Holy Cross athletics. Then we have Chris Noble. Chris has recently completed his time leading the Professional Golf Association of America DEI team. He assumed his role after a very successful stint as a PGA National High School Golf Association lead, where he took the business line from non-revenue generating in 2018 to more than $800,000 in total revenue in 2022. And Brian Welch is an Assistant Athletic Director for Athletics Academic Services at Youngstown State University in Ohio. Brian oversees the academic support for Youngstown State soccer, volleyball, women's basketball, men's and women's swimming and diving, and men's golf programs. Easier to list the things you're not doing. Then. Welch has an extensive background as a lacrosse coach. He served as the head men's lacrosse coach at Division III Hiram College in Ohio, and he's an all-time winningest coach at Marion High School here in Indiana. Welch is a graduate of Holy Cross College and also received his bachelor's from the University of Notre Dame in Communications Broadcasting. So we have a fairly wide range of things that people representing certain sports within the community. So let me just make, so I think did anybody explain to you about the microphones? The microphones are for the live stream. So you need to keep them close so that you can speak into them, but they're not for in here, so you don't have to worry about that. So let me start quickly with just, if you can talk a little bit about your career path, how you got into this, what happened, how it all started. So Brian, we'll start with you since you're the closest to the podium.
All right, I guess I'm the guinea pig.
There you go.
Really, I just kind of, I started out in athletics as a student here when I was at Holy Cross. One of my buddies ended up saying, hey, you know, I'm working Notre Dame football games in sports information. And I thought, man, we'd love to do that. And just to kind of make a long story short, I ended up doing sports information as a student here at Holy Cross and then also at Notre Dame. And then also during that time, too, got involved with men's lacrosse there too. It's kind of like a statistician and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of got into like the lacrosse stuff, and then went through a whole plethora of things. And one of my mentors, who was the sports information director at the time at Notre Dame, John Heisler, said, what do you want to do? And I said, eventually I want to still work in college athletics and be an athletic director someday. He's like, well, take this to heart. Learn everything about an institution. I took that to heart. So like 25, 30 years later, end up doing a whole plethora of things, including coaching, and now enjoy working with student athletes on a daily basis. Also now, besides the academic things, I'm also working with the NIL stuff, which is, we could talk about that for hours if I have to. But really, it's been just a great opportunity. And so,
I was telling Brian earlier that 2 days ago I was down in Indianapolis attending the conference of lawyers, attorneys. Particularly, we spent, of the 5 hours, we probably spent an hour and a half to 2 hours on the NIL in the Division I NCAA realm, and it was very depressing, but it was interesting. So, go ahead.
Again, I'm Angelo Carlo. I'm a sports broadcaster here in town. I got the benefit when I was younger that my older brother, who's 13 years older than me, that also went to sports broadcasting, so kind of opened some doors for me out of the gate. And then when I was 24, I got the job at WNDU and came from Pennsylvania over here, and was there for 11 years. Got to do a lot of cool things. Was with the team in Florida when they got bashed by Alabama in the national championship game. Got to go to many NCAA tournaments and cover the Super Bowl as well when it was in Indianapolis. So I had a great time there. And then in 2018, I shifted over to Redeemer Radio, which is the Catholic radio station in town. And you're like, well, wow, that's a weird switch. But I had a great opportunity there to kind of build my own thing. I did a lot of different things, including adding on sales, which, as some of you will find out, working in the sports world is not exactly the greatest thing in the world in terms of pay. So getting the opportunity to do sales allowed me to make a income that was reasonable, that my wife didn't want to divorce me. So I did that, and I created an internship program with high school kids from Marion and St. Joe, and they were actually a part of our program, so it was really neat to have that as we broadcasted games. About a year and a half ago, I shifted over to WHME TV 46 here in South Bend, covering the high school game of the week. Expected that to be a long journey with them, and then this summer, seismic shift, they decided to end sports programming out of nowhere. And I see some people shaking heads. I know a lot of you guys recognize some faces. A lot of you guys are local, and we're probably a part of the game of the week over time. And that happened in July, and out of nowhere, we had to decide what we were doing, and I could write a book on how to start a small business in 7 weeks, because that's what we did. So we are streaming games on Sports Michiana with me and Chuck Freeby and a slew of others who are helping us out. And it's not been perfect, but it's been great to be on the air and covering the high school game of the week still. We've been doing it on YouTube and Facebook and the HCC network, and it's a lot of paperwork behind the scenes to start a small business, but it's been a blast. So I agree with Brian. Learning a lot of different things is the key to success in any field, especially for you guys, because if I could have predicted how things have changed, how much things have changed in the 20 years since I graduated college to now, I would never have imagined. So being diversified and learning stuff is absolutely critical.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and Dr. Bob, Adam, and everybody. It's just a pleasure to be here with you all. It's hard to believe that I think 9 years ago was the last time I was in this room giving my capstone, so you'll all be there suited up. But yeah, it's been a great journey. As Dr. Bob mentioned, the game of golf has kind of been my entire life. Played since I was very young, played in high school, 4 years, varsity golf here at Holy Cross too. And it was interesting because I remember, being in this room and across campus, graduated with a business degree. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, right? I knew that I loved sports. I knew I loved golf. I loved helping people. And funny enough, actually, my first job out of college was from caddying for somebody for, basically 7-8 years. And actually, he's probably still on the board of trustees here at Holy Cross. His name's Dan Fitzpatrick. And had an opportunity to go down to Florida, to Tampa, to actually work for him directly for about 2 years. And, the second largest Burger King franchisee in the country. It was a great opportunity, learned a lot from him. But I also knew I was like, oh, this is a great start, but really wasn't fulfilling, wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So from there, I took some time and I really said, okay, I want to get back into that sports world. I want to, help people. I want to be around golf. So I actually found an opportunity through a athletic recruiting agency called Next College Student Athlete, NCSA, based in Chicago. So I was still living in Florida at the time, but really cool opportunity to work with student athletes, their families, getting them in touch with college coaches, finding the right fits for them in the program. So very fulfilling. But to Angelo's point, yeah, I mean the pay was pretty bad. It was pretty bad, but it got me in the right direction. And really from that, I actually got an opportunity to be introduced to my former boss, who was a head of a startup company based out of Boston. It was called Next Gen Golf, and kind of the whole thought of Next Gen Golf was around collegiate club golf, young adult tournaments. There was an opportunity for me to actually start a new business line. It was called, basically the idea was to take high school golf and give it a true home and resource that's really never been experienced before. And we took an idea, we kind of knew where we wanted it to go, but it was a lot of figuring out, right? It was a lot of like, okay, we want to create a national championship. We want to create an education. We want to create a website. And it was difficult, like, because it definitely took me out of my comfort zone. And you have good people around you, but to be part of a startup company of 7-8 people, and then the coolest thing was to see that success, and we actually then were acquired by the PGA of America in 2019, was really something, right? So from there, obviously continued to lead the high school business, and a passion of mine is obviously inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion. Personal story about me, obviously it's something that I think the game continues to need in all sports, where everybody is welcome, regardless of your background, who you are, sexuality, and anything of that sort. So trying to use my personal story to inspire others, and even my coming out journey after I played at Holy Cross, just to let others know that, hey, you can play this game, you can be your true self, and you don't have to fit a stereotype that necessarily fits there. So being able to lead a lot of those DEI efforts across the association these past 2 years, it's been a challenge, but it's work that matters. And like obviously the two panelists before me, just grateful to be in this situation to continue to inspire others. And again, grateful to be here with you all today too. So.
Thanks, Chris. I'm Abby Clark, head women's golf coach here at Holy Cross, and my journey to becoming the women's golf coach here is a bit different. It sounds a bit corny, but it's true that I feel like I was always meant to end up at Holy Cross. So I actually got recruited to play golf, and I went to school in Kansas City my freshman year of college. I was getting recruited by Holy Cross. I decided at the end it wasn't going to be for me. I went to school in Kansas City. Ended up not working out there. The golf program actually disbanded, unfortunately. So I kind of tail between my legs, called TJ Mannon, the women's golf coach at the time at Holy Cross, asking if there was still a spot on the team for me. Luckily there was. So I transferred over to Holy Cross to finish out my undergrad career. Then I went as far away as I could go, which is going over to Europe for 3 years, where I lived and worked and taught English, and I was a nanny for a while. And when I moved back to the States, I thought I'd be going back to Arizona, where I'm from. But I met my fiance, who was from South Bend, and he was never leaving this place. He's South Bend till the end. So when I decided he was going to be the person I want to spend my life with, I was moving to South Bend. I didn't immediately think, oh, I should get a job at Holy Cross. It was more like I felt comforted here. I felt welcomed here, and they reached out to me and said, the women's golf program is kind of in disarray lately. There's been coaching turnover. Things haven't been strong, and that just broke my heart to hear, because as I'm sure you guys agree, your college athletics experience is so important. Those relationships that you've made, the relationships with your coaches, the whole experience is just so unique and special and great. It was the best part of my college experience. So to hear that the women's program at Holy Cross wasn't doing so well, it really did break my heart. So I knew that they were splitting up the coaching. They wanted to have a dedicated men's coach and a women's coach so that more time could be dedicated to each team. So being able to be the first head coach of the women's golf team I'm very honored to take on this role. I will admit, I'm still learning every single day. It's very humbling being a new coach. We'll talk about it later when we talk about the challenges and successes, but I'm just hitting the ground running. I'm learning how this team culture is working. I'm learning how to be a coach. And again, I just feel like I'm back where I was always meant to be. So thanks.
All right. So about 10 years ago, I showed up at a community conversation, a panel, much like this panel right here. And the topic was, how do you improve participation in youth sports in the South Bend community? I was curious about that, so I showed up at that panel and participated. It was a series of 10 community workshops. Little did I know that during that whole time, the superintendent of South Bend Schools was also part of that group. About the 10th one, he walks up to me and he says, "Hey, I've been watching you and I've seen your participation, and I like some of the things that you said. If I actually gave you an opportunity to write a business plan and create a job and write the job description about youth sports and a job that would actually be a part of South Bend Schools in athletics, would you interview for it?" And of course I said, yeah, I'd be interested in that. So I did that, and he said, well, I hope you're ready to put your money where your mouth is, because I'm ready to kind of launch this, change this job, and create this specifically for you, because I think you'd be the person for the job. So the rest is history. So for 5 years now, I've been the director of community programs in K through 12 athletics for South Bend Community Schools. Prior to that, my journey has been as crooked as hell. It's the oddest journey, and I won't bore you with the details of it. But I will tell you that I originally was a preferred walk-on football player at Ball State University in the early '80s, and I got smashed up, so I quit. The only thing I've ever quit in my entire life. It wasn't what I thought it would be. I mean, I figured I'd be a tackling dummy for much bigger and more athletic athletes, and I was. But the good thing that happened out of that was I met a lady who was called a Cardinal Bell at the time, which means her job was to just kind of walk us around and tell us how great the university was. She was a journalism major. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I started off as a landscape architect major. I was trying to figure out what I could do as a profession without actually having to talk to people, because I'm deeply introverted at the time, and I'm still pretty introverted. But I'm a first-generation college student, a kid who was about, a short, round kid who was really dark at the time. In the 70s, that was terrible, because you had to be really light with a big afro and look like Michael Jackson. If you didn't, you were just ostracized. And I spent much of my time like that, which made me really angry, so I made me a good football player, too. But because I was deeply introverted, I wanted to find something that I didn't have to talk to people. So I started off with landscape architecture. I met this lady who would eventually be my wife. She's my wife right now. She convinced me to try journalism, because that's what she did. Well, little did I know there was a lot of speaking, a lot of public speaking and writing in journalism. So I started off in journalism and had to give a speech. The first speech I gave, I got sick and threw up in the class and had to walk out, so I quit that. But little did I know I had to have speech to graduate. So I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do? I'm a first-generation college student. Nobody has gone before me. I can't get kicked out. I got to figure out a way to get through this. So I spent probably, an entire semester at Ball State. There's this intersection called the Scramble, and the bell goes off, the cars stop, and then people just start crossing all over the place. So I figured, where can I meet a lot of people, talk to people, and try to get over this incredible anxiety that I have about speaking to people one-on-one. So I'd go to the Scramble every day, stand there, and just start talking to people. People thought I was crazy. Well, finally I met the guy from, I think it was a little town called Knightstown in central Indiana. And he was a human performance major, which I thought was pretty incredible. So I ended up hanging around him, and I graduated from Ball State with like a triple major in sports performance, journalism, and business. And I just that was the beginning of my career. So I started off as DeBartolo. I worked for DeBartolo in mall management, first job out of college because I had an internship. It was the easiest thing to do because I landed a job because of the internship. I then took a little path to business development where I helped, actually, Mark Tarner, South Bend Chocolate Company. I was the director of franchise and business development for 10 years with him. And the only thing he would allow me to do outside of that was help in youth sports. So I helped grow the youth tackle football program here years ago. I helped grow youth baseball. So that's how I ended up in that room in a seminar, curious about how to increase participation with youth sports in South Bend.
Thank you. That's great. I want to kind of gauge the people that are here. How many people want to get into some kind of activity within the sports community, whether that's through business or broadcasting or whatever? Anybody have an interest? There's one. Well, good. So you guys are listening to all of this, and hopefully that you will you'll also think about this. The interesting thing about listening to all of you is the fact that none of you planned to be here, right? None of you really planned to get in here. And I think as far as being at a liberal arts institution, these guys are prepared for whatever comes their way. And I understand from my career counseling colleague that you can plan on changing your careers at least 7 times in your lifetime. So prepare yourself, get the basics down, and then look for opportunities that happen. It was not my plan to be here either in my career. So things happen, and you prepare yourself, and you do the best you can. Milt, can I go back to you? I want to ask you a little bit about the qualities you're looking for when you're hiring people for these specific jobs.
Yeah. The heart of an athlete. And I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting in this room, but it's, the things that athletic competition teaches you they'll serve you for the rest of your life. How to deal with loss. And these are things that you guys have heard a billion times, right? But it's real. Dealing with adversity, the type of discipline, the mental toughness, stick to it just to be able to stick to something and create a plan. If you create a plan, and then no matter what people say, you believe in that plan. I got a 22-year-old son who wanted to play basketball. Right? He was much like me. He was kind of short, a little slow, kind of semi-athletic, a little chubby as a kid. And he, for the life of me, I don't know why, he was a great baseball player. This is daddy talk, right? Kid could play baseball and was a good football player as a little kid. But every black kid wants to be a baller, right? So just like everybody, he wanted to be a baller. But he was average at best. He ends up getting cut his junior year. But because he wanted to play so bad, as a 5th grader, he decided to create a plan. Everybody told him he wouldn't do it. So he would save up his birthday, and Robles probably knows him, but he would save up his birthday and Christmas money to buy agility lessons for himself at Beacon. So he does all this stuff, and sure enough, he's lean, and he's watching his diet. He's making meals for himself. He's like 6th grade. He's making all his food, everything. So by the time he's a freshman in high school, sure enough, I'm like, Jesus, he can play, a little. He wasn't even as good as me, and I only played 2 years of high school. But athletically, he transformed himself, which I was kind of shocked. But he made this plan, and no matter what anybody says, we were one day we were at getting a cup of coffee. I was getting a cup of coffee, and I took him with me to get a bagel. And Dr. Furlick is at South Bend Chocolate Company. And he introduces himself, and my son says, yeah, my name is Isaac. And he says, Isaac, oh, what do you want to, same old man stuff they give you. What do you want to do when you grow up? So Isaac says, I want to play in the NBA. And hey, he's 6'1", And he says, well, what's your backup plan? And Isaac says, well, I don't have a backup plan. He says, well, I don't plan to fail. So that was probably the proudest moment. And no matter what, I'm like beaming all day long. Because this guy's an orthopedic surgeon, and he's asking my son, and my son's not intimidated by that. He had a plan, and no matter what, he was going to stick to that plan. Well, today, he's at IU now, and he's pre-med. And what happened was, because he was so doggedly committed to that journey, the real plan unfolded, because he would not, the real outcome for him began to unfold, because he was nasty about the journey and about the plan. So it's about the things that type of toughness and type of discipline, the type and the ability and the courage and the curiosity that you need to stick to a plan and be committed to a plan. That's what I look for.
Thank you.
in people.
Thank you. I think that's a conversation that our career development person has had with a number of people here, is to develop the plan and not to wait until 2 months before graduation to do that, right? So thank you. I appreciate it. Chris, can you talk a little bit about your experience with the DEI, not only with golf, but maybe with athletics, period?
Sure. Absolutely, Bob. Yeah, it's it's interesting because I think overall right now a lot of everybody in here are seeing it's a bit polarizing, isn't it? And the way that, at least for myself personally, and coming into the role as leading a lot of these diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives for PGA of America, is you have to look at the overall culture of sport in golf, right? And recognize, at least the way that we went about it, or I try to go about it, is you have to do a lot of due diligence, right? You have to understand, especially with PGA of America, because what a lot of people don't understand, there's 30,000 members across the United States. There's 41 section offices. And each section operates a little bit differently. It could be culturally, it could be the demographic of their membership, but really trying to understand what is important for them, and like we were just talking about, is developing a plan. Because I think a lot of times people will say, well, you need to be more inclusive. Well, what does that mean, right? And if you can't measure the success of whether it's diversity, equity, inclusion, or any initiatives, it's hard to know how you're doing in these processes. And the way that ultimately we try to go about this work is a couple of different ways. You have to look at education. You have to look at, especially with PGA, it's very heavy on the governance side of things, in trying to get people from diverse backgrounds into leadership roles, right? Because if you can see yourself actively represented in something that you are doing, whether it's sports or anything else in life, you are more likely to engage with that activity, right? If you can't see yourself, you can't be it sometimes. So that was one thing we really, really focused on. And ultimately, when I would be going around to a lot of these section offices or having these talks, it was tough. I mean, I'll be very, very honest with you, where it's like, I don't want to listen to this, woke, so many things, or it's like, why should this matter to me? And ultimately, when you have some of these folks who are kind of on that side of the coin, the one thing that I try to really do, and I think us as a team, is listen, right? Because some of these conversations can get very heated. A lot of people get passionate about it, but the way that I kind of found it is, this is an opportunity to bring somebody in, right? Rather than, have them, kind of put up a wall or a fence, if you can listen to them and if you can understand at least their point of view and where they're coming from, that could really open up an opportunity for them to say, you know what, I never thought of it that way. I never looked at this perspective. So, and really quickly, Bob, on the part, my own personal story, the way I looked at it is, I am a golfer, right? I'm a lot of things in my life maybe don't necessarily add up on paper, where it's like, I'm my faith is still very important to me. You know, I'm a proud gay man. I'm, you know, a son. I'm a golfer. I'm all these things, but they can all exist at the same time, right? They don't have to be mutually exclusive of each other. So, you know, trying to use my own story and inspiring others has been something I've really tried to do over these past, you know, almost 10 years or so. And also for you all in here, never underestimate the impact and the influence that you can have on your teammates, on your, you know, colleagues, and just on anybody. So, couple thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. Brian, the journey of athletics for you started early on, and maybe you can describe a little bit about how you had to get into this and what it meant to you from a career standpoint. We know that getting into these jobs early on doesn't allow for a lot of pay. A lot of people have to do graduate assistantships and volunteer and those kind of things. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for me, I was fortunate enough, you know, to start off in the sports information field, and the folks at Notre Dame were very helpful of getting me into, you know, another Division I institution at Louisiana Tech University. And from there, I was fortunate enough to be a part of 2 women's Final Four. One was a national championship game. We lost to Tennessee. And then the following year, we lost to Purdue in a Final Four. And from there, I thought, I talked to one of the student athletes on the flight home, and she just was talking about how she just felt so disconnected to the university and stuff like that. And I just kind of relayed my experiences of how I got involved in a lot of things. And 2 weeks later, she comes up to me and is like, "That was the best advice I was ever given." And I thought to myself, okay, I'm on the wrong side of athletics. I mean, don't get me wrong, and I love, you know, the sports information field and stuff like that. But from August all the way to, you know, June, you're living out of a suitcase, not getting paid a lot. If you wanted to have, you know, a girlfriend or a wife, you know, good luck, because it's not going to happen. So then I thought, all right, one of the things, if you want to do other things, you have to have experience. I'm like, all right, I only have just a minimal amount of experience in just one area. And, you know, once again, I'm going back to my mind thinking, you know, what would John Heiser tell you to do? He's like, go get a degree and learn everything about the college campus and athletics. And so that's when I went to Ohio University, and I was very fortunate as a GA position. It was dealing with student success, and a good part of the at-risk students I worked with were football and men's basketball. And I thought, man, this is a great opportunity. But during that time, too, I was very fortunate, and I still think that I'm the luckiest man alive today. That's where I got to meet my wife, and, you know, I somehow snaked her into moving back to South Bend, Indiana at the time. And then I thought to myself, okay, I'm working in higher education, but I still want to work in athletics. So I'm like, all right, I'm a graduate of Marion High School. And I drove over there and talked to Reggie Glahn, who was the athletic director at the time. I said, I really want to get involved. And he's like, well, you know, we really need someone to kind of help with analytics for football. I'm like, okay, sure. So for 8 seasons, I was kind of like, you know, basically being, you know, Reggie's shadow, and like, all right, this is what's working, this is not what's working. During that 8 years, too, he said, hey, we're going to start lacrosse. And I'm thinking, okay. Every summer, I went back to where my parents were from Syracuse, New York, which is a hotbed of lacrosse. And I played around with it, but I never played, you know, an actual organized game, stuff like that. So to make a long story short, ended up coaching at Marion for lacrosse. Started the program from the ground floor up, which was probably one of the best and most impactful things I ever did. And from there, Ancilla College, which is, you know, I don't know, 25 miles down the road in Plymouth, and ended up starting, you know, a job in institutional research. But the president and athletic director came to me and said, hey, we want to start a lacrosse program. I'm like, why not? You know, this was a great opportunity. And did that for 2 years. And then all of a sudden, you know, someone from Concordia in Chicago reached out to me like, hey, we need help with lacrosse. I'm like, okay, say no more. I love Chicago. I don't mind commuting. I think my whole career has been commuting, 45 minutes or more, it seems like. So I don't mind that. And that was a program that never won a lacrosse game until I got there. It was the worst Division III lacrosse program in the country. And I thought, man, all my friends were like, it's career suicide, Brian, don't do it. I'm like, all right, I love the challenge. And so I did it and ended up then being fairly successful. Still is a program that, it had its ups and downs. Like now it's no longer in existence. They just cut the program. And so surprise, surprise. So I ended up being the winningest coach there. So hooray for me. And then from there, I'm like, you know what? It's the opportunity to pivot, and opportunity presents itself to one of my passions is in academics and helping students succeed and realize their potential. And that's when Valparaiso University, as an assistant AD there, opened up. And then, it was there for almost 8 months. And my wife's like, I'm going to move back home to Ohio. I'm like, absolutely. She needed to, we needed to be closer to family. And that was an opportunity then to get into compliance. I would tell you, if you really like rules and regulations and you want to get into a good high end into an athletic department, get involved in compliance. I promise you, especially now in this day and age with NIL and roster management, it's helped me now. And then, make a long story short, I guess I got the gift of gab from my father, so I apologize. But ended up going back into coaching again for a year, and I thought, I can make an impact, and we do. We had a lot of broke some records, but my passion wasn't there, and all of a sudden I see this opportunity at Youngstown State, but it was at almost like an entry level, and my boss and Jim Trussell, who's helps with the Youngstown athletic department, he's like, we got a steal with this kid. And I'm like, well, don't think I'm a kid. I'm 50 years old. And within the 4 or 5 months, they promoted me now to assistant AD, but also now getting involved in roster management is kind of now you're going to hear me talk a little bit more about being a GM, for roster management for football, men's and women's basketball, and working with the NIL stuff. And let me tell you, it's a very eye-opening experience. Some of these, student athletes, they should get paid. Don't get me wrong. But now they're making ungodly amounts of money, more than some of the administrators. I'm like, oh man, I should need to go back to be a student athlete. But no, as I said, for me, just getting your foot in the door, getting to, the best advice I would tell you to do is have energy and everything that you do, the passion that you do with people around, that see you, but also have that same energy and power when people aren't around. It's that habit forming. If you can do that on a constant basis, you can do anything that you want. And, it's obviously it helps, it's like the 6 separations of Kevin Bacon, someone's going to know somebody. But, just be relational. If you can do that, you're going to be very successful in anything that you do. Thank you. Sorry for the long-windedness.
That's okay. We knew that was going to happen.
I know.
Angelo, let me ask you a question. The fact that you're in broadcasting reminded me of my time when I was in college. I was a general manager of the radio station, which at that particular point was AM because there wasn't much FM going on. But also I broadcast basketball games from the bleachers of the schools that we played against. And I just remember those nightmare days. But talk to us a little bit about how you got into the broadcasting part of it. What prompted you to start that? And what are you looking for people that work with you in the broadcasting industry?
Well, I think the biggest thing is how much it's changed. When I got in, it was still pretty traditional in the sense that you had people were going to newspapers, people were watching TV news at 6 p.m. and watching the sportscasts. And 20 years later, we're streaming this right now on YouTube. And that has its benefits that everybody can have the opportunity to do these things, but the negatives are that people are not reading the newspapers as much, and people are not watching TV news as much, and thus those ownerships are not making the money that they need to be able to sustain what they were previously doing. So there's been emerging technology that has resulted in seismic shift in how you present sports. And what my job now as a digital sports broadcasting company that literally streams on YouTube, Facebook, we don't even have a website yet, which is coming very soon, but it would not be able to be possible 10 years ago, right? Because those platforms didn't exist. If Twitter ceases to exist in 6 months, that's going to be a massive blow to us, because between Chuck and I, we have like 27,000 followers on Twitter. I mean, that's how we get the word of mouth out of, hey, watch this, do this. So I think that has changed. Technology has been great because it allows our business to now exist that we've launched, but it's also been a negative in that everybody can do different things. And I've seen that with a lot of the people I've worked with over the years. I went to Syracuse University, which is one of the premier broadcasting schools in the country, and part of the sports broadcast platform there. And we had a lot of great, talented people. And I think from the people I graduated with, really only a few of us are still on air. And there's only one that's probably in the true traditional sense that's on air actually doing sports on TV. Everybody else is in different, some are behind the scenes doing great. One of my co-anchors back in college, she's the senior director for the NFL. So she's doing awesome. But people are in different areas and have done different things. So it's being able to take those talents. But then at the same time, I've had people who I used to work with at WNDU, they've moved on and now work in marketing at huge industries because they've learned they have a skill set that can now be allocated somewhere else. And a lot of these companies are realizing that, hey, wait a minute, we don't have to pay for advertising of our company, we can do it ourselves. And we can do videos of certain things. Briefly, when I had gone to Redeemer Radio, it was freelance in the beginning, I had actually gone, also took a full-time job at Grand Design RV in Middlebury, and was doing marketing and doing videos there. And I think Chris kind of touched on this before. It just ultimately wasn't the passion that I wanted to do. I felt I had unfinished business in sports. Now, if I had stayed it out 5-6 years, I'd probably be doing very well for myself on the financial side. But in terms of the passion, it wasn't there for me. But what you see is that you can take stuff in-house. And I think from what you've heard from everybody here so far today is, again, having that skill set and learning different things. So right now, if you are planning on going into a sports management field, go take some business classes. If you're planning on going into business, take some marketing classes, diversify yourself, learn different avenues, because no matter what, when I was doing the internship at Redeemer Radio, I would tell the kids, look, I don't want you to go into sports broadcasting because it's a dangerous field. It changes left and right. But you could learn how to use social media to your advantage. This way, one day, if you own your own business, you know how to use it. So like my time at Redeemer Radio taught me so much to be able to start my own business. I know how to do sales. If I didn't know how to do sales, how would we have started our own business? We are 100% driven by advertising. So I had to know how to connect with people and talk with people. So I think Brian touched on creating relationships. Absolutely the number one thing, I shouldn't say that. Number one thing is working hard. There's nothing you can do more to advance your career and your life than working hard. Number two, building relationships. You build relationships with people you never know, and you got to continue to do it. And I'm not the best with that. I have friends that I've actually just mentioned that I haven't talked to in way too long. So, but if you can still continue to, yes, Matt Florian in the back, we haven't talked in a while. But if you continue to have those relationships, but you're more recent than a lot of people that I got to talk to. That's the funny part. But if you continue to build those relationships, you never know when those doors will open in the future. So I think those are critical things. But again, things are changing so much, and take advantage of what you guys have. You're at a luxury here at Holy Cross that you can take different classes here. You could go across the street and take a class over there, you know, and learn different things. Even if it's one class, that could help you. Learn how to do graphics, because you never know if you're going to have to do that yourself one day. Even if it's the basics that you know how to do it. If it's an online class, whatever, if you have the opportunity to learn different things, that can help you a lot. I have no idea if I answered the question, but
You did just fine, thanks. Abby, this is your first year as a head coach. I don't know if this was something that you dreamed of, becoming a head coach at some point. I know you dreamed of coming back to Holy Cross, but as far as being a head coach, talk to us a little bit about the lessons you've learned as a first-year head coach about all of these things. And I know there are probably people in this room that want to be coaches because they've played sports for countless times and they all think they can do better as coaches. So talk to us a little bit about what you've learned.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to bring this up if the opportunity presented itself. How many of you have thought about being coaches one day? Quite a few. Or right now. I'd say the biggest thing that I've learned is golf is the last thing I do. I'm a therapist, I'm a bus driver, I'm a mom, I'm a chef, I'm a DJ, I'm a peacemaker, I'm a tutor, and then I'm a golf coach. I've actually never golfed less in my life than I have in this past year being the golf coach, because all of my time and energy is spent doing all these other things to make sure that these student athletes are the best version of themselves. You know, these at the college level, they've already come in with the skills, at least. I'm not teaching these players how to swing a golf club. They're here at this college because they've proven themselves to be good enough athletes to get a scholarship to come play here. So yes, my job is to help them with course management, to help them play smarter golf, and I'm sure your coaches help you with some technical skills. But at the end of the day, I'm here to help the athletes be better people, not necessarily golf. So I know on a personal note, my little brother, fantastic volleyball player. He's actually an assistant coach at a NAIA school down in Florida, and he had this awakening too of, this is not for me. Fabulous player, so good technically, amazing skills. It just didn't translate when he had this group of guys that he was working with, because he didn't realize what his job was not that job description of coaching volleyball. It was everything else, and then kind of being the volleyball coach at the end. Sure, you get to play with your players, you know, especially in golf. It's one of the few sports where I can actually play with my players, and it is fun. But you have to know that there's so much more that goes along with it, and you have to be prepared for the challenges that come with that, and how much you're responsible for so much more than just how your athletes are performing on the golf course, on the court. So that was one of the biggest things I realized right away, was it's just so much deeper than you think. And they really look up to you. I started realizing that my players were reflecting how I acted on the golf course, and how I talked in the van on the way to tournaments, and what I did at team dinner. They learn everything from you. Especially as a new coach coming into a new program, I had to kind of create the new team dynamic and culture, because there wasn't one. With coaching turnover, it's hard to get this idea of what is this team. So I started realizing I have to be really smart about how I speak, about how I act. Am I going to show up on time? I remember our coach, he wasn't always the most timely person. He could show up 15, 20 minutes late, but it was okay, because he created a team culture where it was, we're still all there at the exact time. He had another job on campus, so we understood that sometimes he had to wrap up things and then get out to the golf course. But that didn't mean that we could show up 15 minutes late. Nobody was there to keep us accountable except for each other. That was that team culture. So I realized very early on, I was modeling that because I saw what my coach did, and I was like, oh, my team's going to be fine. Like, they know that they need to be there at that time, or they know that I might not show up until this time, or not that I was trying to be late, but it happens. I can't do that. I don't have that luxury yet. I haven't built something yet that allows my players to be on their own more. They have to earn that independence, and I have to earn that behavior from their end. Also, as close in age as I think I am, I'm not. I relate to them on some level. Of course, it's only been a few years since I've graduated, and I do feel like we have similar, experiences, but they see me as not a peer. They see me as a mentor. And sometimes that means you can't be likable. That's really hard. As a woman, that's really hard. As a young woman, that's really hard. I feel like it's so easy to fall into, well, I just want them to like me. And of course, all my friends and family heard that as a new coach when I was talking about it. I'm like, oh, I just hope they like me. And that was coming from an old space of you're almost going into this new school and you're like a new girl. And maybe you guys feel the same way, but it might be more on the woman's side of, oh, I want them to like me. I don't want them to be mad at me. If I'm going to be more stern, like, are they going to respond in a certain way? Out the window immediately, because they'll sense your weaknesses and they'll take advantage of that. That's everyone, not just women. But I had to learn how to be more stern, how to be more strict, how to follow up. If I said I was going to do something, you have to do it, or else they'll never trust you again. They'll just walk all over you. It's almost like kids. This might preparing me for having children, probably, for all the parents in the room. But then you love them like your kids. And when they are excited about something and they come to my office to share that with me, sorry. I just feel so proud of all of them. And it means a lot to be the person that they want to share good news with. And maybe they don't have a great relationship with their parents. And you're going to be the one who they share that with. And this is embarrassing. They're going to go through hardships, and you're going to be the one that they're going to want to share that with. So to answer your question and to wrap it up, you're so much more than a coach, and you need to be prepared for all the good and bad that comes along with that. But that just makes it so much more rewarding. So thanks. I always cry when I'm up here.
Thank you. It reminds me, I was a history education major in college, and I remember the advice that I got going into teaching was don't smile before Christmas to the juniors and seniors in high school. So I think that was always good advice for me. Listening to you and about the things that as a coach you need to be aware of and to be prepared for as you're coaching a team. You went through it with lacrosse. How do you get educated about that? Because it's not like an education degree where you're learning how to be a teacher. You're not necessarily going through an education program to learn to be a coach and to talk about the things that you're going to encounter. Because all of these young men and women, college or high school, wherever it may be, are bringing their own stories to the team, right? They're bringing their own background, and which is creating them in front of you and creating issues or drama or whatever it may be. But how do you prepare yourself for this if you want to get into this field?
The first person when I started as a head coach, the first person I contacted was Kevin Corrigan, the head coach at Notre Dame, and he basically opened the vault for me. Like, you need to expect that you are going to be a parent. You are going to learn, and I'll tell you that the biggest word in higher education and also athletics is pivot. You have to pivot in every which direction, because you're going to have a curveball thrown at you this way, or that way. And be a great listener. If you're a good active listener and kind of relate to them, I always I always refer to, when my wife and I talk about how we deal with some of our students, it's kind of like that super nanny approach to advising. Get to their level. Try to understand why they do the things that they do, and how to all right, make it either a coachable lesson, if they fail, like my biggest thing, you know, and I took this to heart for a very long time, is I hated when they failed because I felt like I failed them. And sometimes, you know, you can't control what you can control. And I think with my students and student athletes, and you know, God bless those boys, especially the ones when I was in Chicago. Like I was always worried, like I couldn't sleep from Thursday night all the way till Sunday morning. You know, Andrea knows that, and you gotta give good sound advice, but also let them fail. Don't be afraid for folks to fail, because it's going to make you stronger. I told this to everybody before, like all my students. You know, life, and this will sound depressing, life is like 80% worth of disappointments. It's what you do with that 20% that's going to make you who you are, and how far you're going to go in life. You know, I'm a firm believer in that, and that deals to two things: attitude and effort. If you can embrace everything with an awesome attitude, like going into an 8 o'clock morning class, if you have a great attitude, you're gonna put what's in that, you know, and give 110% effort in what you do. You're gonna go far in life. And if things haven't happened, they just mean they haven't happened yet. If you haven't won, you know, a Crossroads championship, you just haven't won a Crossroads championship yet, you know, and everything's gonna go back to yet. So just remember that.
I just want to add something, not on the coaching front, but just building off of both of what they guys said about attitude and you know, just kind of sticking it out. And I'm laughing when I'm hearing Abby say you don't have to, you can't be as likable. I've tried over years to not be as hateable, because when I was probably 25 or 26, I was actually very hateable over at WNDU in terms of being such a perfectionist that I demanded it about everybody around us, and it was probably a little extreme in that regard. So I've actually gone the opposite direction over the years, and I found, as you know, I'm not a coach, but you know, doing an internship, you end up being a mentor in that way of high school students, and then now as a business owner, you have the team, your crew and your team, you know, and you have to lead them. But yeah, there's failures, and what we learned this year is, again, we didn't exist as a company 3 months ago, right? And we're broadcasting all these games with a new trailer and a crew that is very experienced. A lot of the people that used to work with us at WHME, but we're doing it in a different way. And we've had a different issue almost every single week. And last night was only the second game in 10 games that actually went off without a hitch. And at halftime, I'm on the sideline, and I turn to our photographer and go, I want to throw up. And he goes, why? I go, because I'm waiting for something to go wrong. So, because I'm like firmly expecting the stream to stop working, the generator to stop because someone forgot to put gas in it or something. There's been just a different thing every time, and you're just waiting for something to go wrong. And thankfully, nothing went wrong. And I got home, and my wife goes, how did the game go? And I go, it was fine, and I didn't enjoy a second of it. Hopefully next week I will. But next week, we're going back to Marion, where we had our worst broadcast of the year back in week 4, because Marion, despite only being 10 minutes away, apparently has the cell phone signal of a third world country. And when you are live streaming outside with no Ethernet and you have to use cell service, it can be problematic for a streaming broadcast. And we're going back to that next week. So going back to Abby saying the last thing you get to do is golf. The last thing I get to actually enjoy is actually broadcasting sports, because it's all the work leading up to those 3 hours of the broadcast that get you to it. It's a whole week of contacting the advertisers, working through the plan, talking with your teammates, and creating what you're going to do, and double checking, okay, do we have the right capabilities of surviving the evening that we're going to have. And sometimes you just don't know until it happens. But you learn every week, and hopefully we are better now, like a football team or like a basketball team, like a golf team. Hopefully we are better now in week 11 than we were in week 2, and we've gotten better. But that's the way you have to do it. And it's just kind of funny to see all those experiences come together. But attitude is a big factor, because while I want to throw up, I'm not turning that on our guys and yelling and saying, why are we not? Look, we're all in it together. So we're trying to collectively succeed. And that's what's really cool. Surround yourself with good people and be a part of a good team. You know, when you're looking for that first job, don't look, if one of them pays $25,000 more, maybe you should take that one. But if it's like you're talking about, oh, this job pays $2,000 more, $3,000 more, in the long run, that doesn't matter, okay? Try to figure out, and this may be hard to figure out, but if you can see the culture here is really good, it might be worth a lot more than the extra $2,000 or $3,000. Because if you can get into a good place, that's going to help you succeed better. And in the long run, you can look at it as, hey, that was my internship. I was a paid internship at a college or whatever to learn a greater trait and then move on. But you want to establish yourself and be in a place where you can succeed in a good culture. The reason why I left WNDU was because the culture had shifted there. And there was not a strong enough emphasis on wanting sports to succeed. Well, why do I want to be broadcasting at a company that didn't seem to care any longer about sports? And that was the case under that management at that time. So I'm like, this makes no sense. So that was time after 11 years to go. So you need to establish and be in a place that you can succeed, and that starts with culture. And Abby talked about, you know, she's creating a culture with her team. You want to be in a place that has a good culture. That's one of the most important things as well.
Let me, all of you have talked about the importance of mentorship in your careers as you've gone through this from the beginning. And I'm wondering if there's advice that you can give to these young men and women about the importance of finding good mentors and being able to reach out, and how that's impacted your careers. Milt, let me start with you.
You know what? I would say, ironically, as Coach Abby said, find some place that will allow you to coach. I mean, honestly, there's no greater leadership opportunity, no greater experience than coaching and being under a coach or an athletic director as a mentor. I mean, coaching at any level, at any age, in terms of, you know, you as a coach and who you might be coaching, there's no greater mentee-mentor relationship than athletic director, coach, head coach, and assistant coach. We started a youth rec basketball program a couple of years ago, and we had 2 freshmen from Notre Dame who just reached out and said, hey, we would like to coach in their league. And when they first came in, they're 18 years old, and we put them in our most underserved area at one of our most underserved middle schools, and where our practices were. And we tried to roster these kids by school. So these 2 young men had the most challenging group of kids that you could possibly imagine. And they were scared. I told them what they were up against. And I knew they were nervous because they called me almost every day. Well, you know, how should I do this? Or how should I do this prior to the season starting? And when they first got started, you know, you could kind of see them lack a little bit of courage and being a little bit intimidated. But by the end of the year, they're challenging and pushing and, Jacorian, get over here. And I'm like, how the hell do you spell Jacorian, first of all? And their mom is like, I told you to get over there. You know, coach is going to be. And much like you, I'm practically in tears because I watched these kids grow through these relationships with their kids and through the mentors that they had, and I helped them out as much as I possibly could. But then we also had athletic directors and coordinators who helped them grow as coaches and as mentors too. So I honestly, I'm sitting and listening to Coach and thinking there's no greater mentor-mentee relationship or opportunities to learn how to lead and be good employees, be great teammates, than coaching, and coaching as quickly as you possibly can, even if it's at age 18.
Sure, yeah. I know since I've started just a year ago, I've reached out to every single previous coach that I've had because I just wanted to get different ideas from the people that I've had great experiences with and the people that I maybe haven't had great experiences with. I've had great coaches, I've had not so great coaches. I've contacted all of them. And I just want to pick their brain about how they've done certain things. Golf is pretty unique in the terms of how practices go, how coaching goes. It's different than other sports. It's a much smaller team. You get a lot of one-on-one time that you don't get perhaps in other sports. Someone always knows more than you. And I'm guilty of it myself, of thinking, I got this, I'm here for a reason, I know what I'm doing, it's going great. And it takes one thing that just humbles you back to thinking, I need so much help. And it's okay, we all need help. So getting back in touch with these people kind of goes back to the relationship building as well. All of them were so psyched to hear from me. Even the people who I wasn't that close with, we've now created a new relationship, and that helps with recruiting. But it's just great to hear their perspectives, how they've softened over time, how I'm trying to work to being a bit more firm, and them over the years of 20-some years of coaching, they've learned what actually matters, what actually is going to make a difference with my team. And when they ask me questions about how I'm doing certain things, and I tell them, I'm doing this, and almost all of them have said, that's not going to work. Like, okay, great, back to the drawing board. That's happened so many times. And it just teaches you that each day is different, each athlete is different, and it takes a long time to really build a great program. So be patient and always send that text out, that email, that LinkedIn message to somebody. They'll be happy to hear it, and you might just find a great new person to help you mentor.
Chris?
Abby, I think you basically just said everything I was going to. No, I mean, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. And just really quickly from my end, a little bit of an echo, but that relationship building, that personal outreach, right? Because candidly, every role that I've had, I mean, in my 10 years of my working career, has come through a connection or somebody that I've known. Like, I've never gotten a job because of just cold applying on LinkedIn. Not to say it can't happen, but truly, I can't encourage you all enough, to Abby's point, whether it's somebody that you've known in your past and it's a bit scary. I know sometimes, right? Like reaching out to somebody, whether it's LinkedIn or email or phone call, but picking up that phone or sending that message. And also, and I think Angelo mentioned this earlier, it's being intentional about keeping up with that too, right? Like, don't just do it as a transactional thing. It's like, hey, what can you do for me? But also, once you get to a certain position, you might be able to help them, right, at some stage in your life. It's very possible. But people want to help, right, especially those who are in levels that, they've gotten to the top, or they're a professional, or they're really, really good in their game. They want to be able to pass on that information. They want to be able to pass on that wisdom. Or, even if you might be, graduating, you might be looking for a role, that person may not necessarily have anything, but they may know somebody who knows somebody, right? And it's all about, creating those authentic relationships. And truly, like, that is, at least in my opinion, I think that's what life's all about, whether it's from a work world or coaching or anything. It's the people that and it's really making sure that that connection point between you and those others is there, and it's strong. So always keep connecting. Yeah.
Adding to that, you're gonna get to the point you will build some of these relationships, right? And then you're gonna you're going to message somebody, and they're not going to respond. And you're going to be like, I wish they would respond. Message them again, because there's a good chance, because I've had people message me, and they happen to message me at the worst time possible. Not their fault. They didn't know. But I'm in a meeting. I happen to look down at my phone, saw it, and then I totally forget about it. So don't be afraid to reach back out. Maybe don't do it 5 minutes later. But, but if it's been a week, and follow up, it's okay. They'll get back to you. If they don't get back to you for 6 months straight, okay, maybe there's something weird that's happened. But then you send them you know what? This just made me think of another thing. I don't do this well enough, but I will throw this out there. My wife believes in this, and it does work. Every time I actually stop being lazy and do it, thank you notes. Handwritten thank you notes can go a long way. In fact, send a handwritten thank you note to your teacher that gave you a B+. Maybe it'll turn into an A-. You never know. But handwritten thank you notes make a big difference because nobody does it. I hate doing them because I physically can't write anymore because I'm so used to typing. So, but that makes a big difference. But again, developing mentors is so critical. I've been lucky because really everyone I've worked with, so many people that I've worked with have turned into my mentors over the years. I got to work with my older brother for a long time. Then I got to shadow under Jeff Jeffers, who, one of the most recognizable sportscasters in local television that can exist. God bless, and I learned so much from him. And then Chuck Freeby, who's now my partner at Sports Michiana. I mean, I can't ask for better people that I've worked with. So, and that, again, that goes back to what we were talking about with culture and everything. Having a good boss is really critical to your success. If your boss is not the best person in the world, it's going to be a tough go. So you want to be able to find good mentors, find good bosses, and also give back. Find the time that if you can help somebody in the smallest of way. I'm still waiting for one of my former interns to rise in the ranks at ESPN or whatever so that they can then give me a job. I've been telling this now for 15 years so that they can say, hey, Anj, you want to fill in on a whatever Rutgers USC football game or something like that? Well, that was on Fox, but you get my point. But yeah, it's so important to develop those relationships. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah, I think they've all said it all. But going back to LinkedIn too, like if you don't know anybody, don't be afraid, and be persistent. I think that's the one great thing about Holy Cross and their students. You guys are dynamic. You're gritty. You're persistent. Don't take no for an answer. I firmly believe that. And also to look at organizations as well too. I was been fortunate enough now, with the N4A, which is the National Athletic Academic Advisors Association of America, which is also through with the NCAA. Like next month, I'm going to be groomed to be like an athletic director. They only choose 6 people out of all 3 divisions, and I was very fortunate enough to be one of those 6. But it was also connecting with folks in the organizations, but also through LinkedIn. And I would tell you to write this name down because this guy has a wealth of information about athletics, especially collegiate athletics. Jeff Parry, he's a compliance person at the University of Notre Dame. Young kid, but man, he is very wise among his years. Like, he knows a lot, and he can kind of help guide you, like the do's and don'ts. And if you ever have an opportunity to take like a life after sports class, take it. I'm teaching one right now, which is kind of cool. But like if you do stuff like that, you're gonna go far. I promise you. And don't be afraid to reach out to like cold calling. But be relational. Build that relationship. It will pay off in the end. I promise you.
Questions? I want to open it up for you to see if anybody has any questions they want to ask any of these panelists about anything. Because I think much of the advice that they've talked about today it goes well beyond sports. It goes whatever field that you want to get into. But are there any questions that anybody wants to ask? And you guys are all going to be shy and not, and I know better. Yes, Max.
I know you guys kind of touched up on this, but time when you guys felt
I don't know if I should be sharing the story on YouTube, but I would say it would go back to when I was leaving WNDU. Again, we were at the point that I saw the new boss came in, and you saw the writing on the wall about there wasn't the care for sports anymore, and they were asking things to be done that fundamentally went against how I felt the sports department should operate. And I got to a point that I was like, I can't agree with this. And I went in for a meeting. I called my wife and I said, if I lose my job in 7 minutes, are we okay? And she said, yep, because I'm sick of hearing about this too. And I get in. I wasn't scheduled to work that day and was told we need to do this or whatever it was. And I was like, can we meet about it? And I knew, So I pull in, and one of the other bosses meets me in the parking lot and is like, okay, let's talk about this for a second. He's trying to con me off the ledge. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I mean, like, if it's going to end right now, let it end right now. I'm like, it's March. I got till August to figure out what's next. So I had a plan, so to speak. I had no idea what that plan was, but I knew I'm like, my contract ended in July, and I knew that they were not going to probably renew my contract because of this changing landscape. And so when you get into that situation, you have to have conviction. You have to have belief that you are, if they don't want to do, I don't want to say do things the way you want to do it, but if you don't believe in the mission anymore, why stay there longer? Now, obviously, you can't just quit out of nowhere unless you can sustain it, right? I mean, if you don't have enough money in the bank to be able to withstand 2 months, okay, you can figure it out and figure out the next plan and then move on, right? But we were at the point, that we could do that. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And they said, okay, goodbye. And we moved on, and that was fine. But I think standing up for yourself is important. You have to find what that line is, right? But I think that's very important in life.
Nash, did you?
I think Milt.
I was just going to say, early on in my career, I felt stuck every 5 years. I sensed the pattern. I felt stuck every single 5 years, and I think that was because I didn't have the type of experience, influence, power, and courage to be the person who influenced change. Like now, I'm at the point now where I'm the change maker. So if I feel like I have a responsibility to be that person now. So I influence change, and I'm the one who drives no matter, even if that's not my job, I feel responsible and capable of actually making the change. Like right now at South Bend Community Schools, we don't have a winning culture. And I don't mean just in athletics. I mean just in general. We oftentimes get beat up about things that don't matter, but we don't see ourselves oftentimes as we don't see ourselves as winners. So it's my job to actually drive enrollment, to drive change, to drive and to create a winning culture through winning athletics. And it's an awesome responsibility. Leadership's terrible. It's brutal. But somebody has to do it, and it means a lot, especially for an overall community. So I've taken on that responsibility. I'm old enough where I've got to be the one to actually change now. So I can no longer be stuck, nor can I feel stuck. But early on, I did. Every 5 years, I felt like, much like, and I know what Angelo's talking. I mean, change wasn't happening fast enough. I want to win. I want to be better as an organization. I want the organization to be better. And it's just not, the infrastructure is just not there. So, but now I've got to create the infrastructure. I've got to create change, and I've got to help us win as a leader.
Questions? Nash, did you have a question?
So going from like the
lot of stuff you don't really have to worry about managing yourself. And so how do you transition from going to someone that provides a lot of structure for you to going to an independent world where you graduate and no one has responsibility of your actions, so you have to kind of create everything yourself? What was that transition for you guys?
Yeah, I can be quick on this. It's a great question, and I guess with my experience, like personally, I've done a lot of remote work for 7-8 years at this point, right? So, I mean, obviously yourself as an athlete, it's like you have some structure, right, in terms of what time your workouts are, what time practice is, and I think at least for myself, like I did lean a lot on. Really that time as an athlete to try to, propel you into that situation. But also what I came to realize is, especially in the situation, and I think a lot of organizations, regardless where you're going to go, it's probably either going to be a hybrid model, might be a little bit work from home. And you have to be able to really have that discipline to set that schedule for yourself, right? And it's not just from like a scheduling standpoint. I think a lot of it is also like also work-life balance, and everybody up here is in a different situation spot, right? Some have families, some have kids, some are single, but being able to also work hard, as Angelo said like earlier, but also still making time for yourself is so important, because you can get burnout very easily, especially working in sports, right? I think a lot of organizations take advantage of that because it's like, oh, you're doing what you love, so let's do it all the time. Yeah, the passion needs to be there, but you need to be able to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I need to focus on myself and some of these others. So what I would say is it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take time to really figure out, and also be honest with yourself and what works for you, because what might work for a friend of yours or somebody else may not be that winning recipe for yourself.
My father was a factory worker, and I was actually born in the South in Mississippi in 1964. Right, so I'm 60 years old. And he was a sharecropper at my birth. I was actually born on a little plantation. And so he, when he was a factory worker, he as a farmer, he would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And people used to ask me this question all the time, like, man, how do you, because I had a pretty strong work ethic as a kid, and to this day I would work really hard. And it's really natural to me. So somebody asked me, how do you do that? How do you organize? How do you have such a great work ethic? And it was my father. So I used to just watch him and watch what he did. What was how did he start his day? How did he kind of pivot in life? What type of discipline did he have? So I just modeled kind of what he did. So I think you just have to find, in my opinion, you find somebody who's the baddest, most well-respected, the toughest, smartest person that you can think of, and just do what they do. Yeah. And organize your life a little bit like how they organize theirs.
I'd also add, you have a template. Just because no one's going to necessarily tell you to be at practice or be at class, you have a template of now, I know I've been told I have to be doing these certain things. So use that template and then restructure that to what your new job, your new life will be. And I will say this as someone who is way out of shape and doesn't work out nearly as much. You guys are all being told to work out, right? You have to for what you do. If whatever is next doesn't involve actually participating and practicing and doing all this stuff, you got to take time to do it, because otherwise you're going to be like me and you're not going to, and then you get to the point that you're like, I used to run a 6.5-minute mile and now I'm not going to say the number because that's how embarrassed I am, and I don't want to do it because it makes me feel horrible, and then you go 2 more years and you don't do it. So that's another thing. Keep your body in good health, and check that when you're 32, because at 22 it's a little easier. When you're 32 it gets harder.
Yeah. Anybody else? Did you want to add anything to this? Any other questions? We're almost out of time, but our panelists have been gracious enough this morning to tell us that they'll stay behind if you want to just talk personally, privately. You're too shy to ask a question in front of your teammates or friends, but they'll be hanging around for another half an hour or so just to talk to you if you'd like to talk to them. So can we give them a round of applause and thank them for their work? Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Okay.